Family planning, the changing path of unmet need. The growing use of family planning around the world has given couples the ability to choose the number and spacing of their children, reducing the number of high-risk pregnancies and promoting women's empowerment. Yet, despite all of these impressive gains, today, more than 220 million women in the developing world at different stages of their reproductive lives are not using any type of contraception, even though they say they have that need. We call this an unmet need for family planning. Unmet need is when a woman who is sexually active wants to delay her next birth or not have any more children, but is not using any type of contraception. Why are millions of women who say they have a need for contraceptives still not using any today? And what have we learned about these women? We have learned that unmet need is complex because it's not a one-time event. Women can move in and out of need for family planning across their reproductive lives, complicating the picture. And when a woman's need for family planning is not satisfied, it can lead to serious consequences for women, their families, and for the nation. Because women's need for family planning changes over their lives, they can have a need starting at a very young age. Consider Binta, who is 17. She meets a boy she likes named Kofi, and they soon become sexually active. Binta does not want to become pregnant, but she does not know where to go to get counseling or services for family planning. Binta has an unmet need for family planning. Binta eventually becomes pregnant and has her first child at a young and vulnerable age. Binta, like many adolescents around the world, did not know of a source for contraceptives. This inadequate knowledge remains a major barrier for increasing contraceptive use among adolescents. Binta is just one of the 16 million girls who give birth every year. Worldwide, that translates into 1 in 5 girls who give birth by the age of 18. But in the poorest regions of the world, this figure is about 1 in 3 girls. We also find that among both married and sexually active unmarried women who want to avoid a pregnancy, adolescent girls are the least likely to use modern contraception. Only 32% of sexually active adolescents use modern methods, compared to about half of those sexually active women aged 20 to 24, 63% of women aged 25 to 34, and 70% of those over 35. In fact, more than 2/3 of adolescents who want to avoid a pregnancy are not using modern contraception. Among married adolescent girls in sub-Saharan Africa, 80%, or nearly 4 out of 5 married young women, don't want to get pregnant but are not using any type of family planning. And among sexually active unmarried young women, almost 2/3 are not using a modern contraceptive method but do not want to get pregnant. Like Binta, many girls start life at a very young age with a child. After the baby is born, Binta and Kofi decide to get married. She wants to wait before becoming parents again, but her new husband and other family members are opposed to contraceptives and they think she should have more children right away now that they are married. Binta has an unmet need for a second time and she becomes pregnant and has her second child. Among the more than 220 million women who say they want to use family planning but are not using, there are 3 regions: Sub-Saharan Africa, South Central Asia, and Southeast Asia that are home to more than half of these women. And in these regions, 7 out of 10 women with unmet need for modern methods give reasons for not using family planning that could be satisfied by proper counseling and the right method. When we look across women of all ages, what are the top reasons that women who want to avoid a pregnancy are not using? Number 1, are concerns about health risks and side effects. 1 in 4 women with unmet need are worried about health risks, often due to those persistent myths and misconceptions about contraceptive methods that never seem to go away. A second top reason is having sex infrequently. Many believe that if they only have sex occasionally, they are not at risk, and therefore don't need to use family planning. And a third top reason is opposition to using family planning methods by a partner or other family members, like in the case of Binta and Kofi. And it's important to note that lack of access to family planning services is not a top reason that is given in national surveys. In fact, access ranks low on the list of barriers compared to the many social and cultural obstacles that unfortunately hold many couples back from using family planning services. Turning back to Binta and Kofi, with 2 small children, they are now determined to space their next child. They decide they would like to wait at least 3 years until they are more financially secure to have their 3rd child. They go together to the family planning clinic and, after speaking to the nurse, choose a hormonal implant. Now, Binta does not have to worry about getting pregnant. Finally, Binta's need for family planning is satisfied. Binta is one of the lucky ones who received appropriate counseling and was able to access a long-acting contraceptive on that day when she walked into her local family planning clinic. She chose an implant, which is inserted into the upper arm and can protect against pregnancy for 3 to 7 years, depending on the type of implant. But many women and couples who want to postpone the next birth for several years are not able to find long-acting contraceptives like hormonal implants or intrauterine devices, IUDs, another long-acting contraceptive. And if they're interested in limiting births and do not want to have any more children, they may not be in an area with facilities that provide permanent methods such as female or male sterilization. According to a recent study of 18 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, on average, more than 1/3 of all demand for family planning is for limiting the number of births. And it found that contraceptive users who want to limit births are more likely to be using the less effective, short-acting, or traditional methods than the long-acting or permanent methods. Now, after 4 years, Binta and her husband decide to have a 3rd child. She has the implant removed and she becomes pregnant. After the baby arrives, they decide they want no more children. There are no longer any long-acting or permanent methods available at the clinic, so she decides to use Depo-Provera injections to avoid getting pregnant again. She and her husband moved to his family's rural village, where unfortunately there is a stockout of injections in the local clinic. Binta is forced to discontinue the Depo and there's no other method available. Binta once again has an unmet need. As we follow Binta's path across her reproductive life, we see how a woman's status can change over time and lead to that revolving door of unmet need. Data from a recent study by PRB shows that the magnitude of unmet need is much greater than we thought. Focusing on 2 country examples, Senegal and Uganda, we see that the way unmet need is usually measured, a snapshot of a woman's life at just one point in time, indicates that 30% of women in Senegal and 33% of women in Uganda have an unmet need for family planning. But if we measure the proportion of women who have unmet need at some point looking across 5 years of her reproductive life, the percentage goes up to 37% in Senegal and 52% in Uganda. And if we count the percent of women who experience multiple episodes of unmet need, we find that 14% of women in Senegal and 27% in Uganda experience 2 or more episodes in just a 5-year period of their reproductive lives. So why is it so important that we understand unmet need, and why are we spending so much time studying it? Because it can lead to serious consequences. One consequence of unmet need is large numbers of unplanned pregnancies. Women who want to avoid a pregnancy but are not using contraception account for the majority of all unplanned pregnancies. Large numbers of unplanned pregnancies lead to abortion, and in many countries that have restrictive abortion laws, terminations are often performed under unsafe conditions and result in women dying or suffering serious injuries. If all women who wanted to avoid pregnancy were using modern contraceptives, the number of unintended pregnancies would fall, which would translate into 22 million fewer unplanned births each year, 15 million fewer unsafely performed abortions, and 90,000 fewer maternal deaths. Today, we have unprecedented opportunities to make a difference and reduce unmet need. We have new global initiatives that are creating opportunities, such as the historic London Summit on Family Planning held in July of 2012. And we have the Family Planning 2020 initiative, which continues to frame the discussions and move toward tangible results as governments, civil society, and technical institutions all work to reduce barriers and bring information and services to an additional 120 million women and girls in the poorest countries by 2020. And we have new partnerships that are forging stronger collaboration among donors and partners to mobilize resources and support to strengthen and expand family planning services globally. Like Binta and Kofi, the changing path of family planning needs across a couple's lifetime is a constant challenge and one that deserves our vigilant attention. We have the evidence and we know what works. We need to reach out to women and their partners at multiple stages in their reproductive lives to better satisfy changing needs, from adolescents and newlyweds to young and middle-aged couples. We need to recognize that providing family planning services over the life cycle requires a variety of tailored policies and strategies if we intend to effectively address couples' needs. We need to focus on reducing those top barriers to family planning uptake, improving counseling services to reduce health concerns and fear of side effects, and breaking down those cultural and social barriers to contraceptive use. And we need to ensure that women and men have access to a full range of contraceptives, short-acting, long-acting, and permanent, and understand their choices in family planning methods given their current life stage. By staying positive and working together, we can build on our past achievements. We can help couples meet all of their family planning needs and walk a steady path across their reproductive lives.